And so we are live here, and now
Yay!
I'm going to be live. Okay, and then if you want to pull up the Facebook group, hello, Mindful Millionaire community. We are getting situated.
We are live.
We are live. And you know, the thing that I always, okay, there we go. I see us there, because sometimes it's helpful to pull it up so then you can see the chat as well. But we'll give folks time to arrive. And we're coming in, we're on Zoom, but we're also in the Facebook group. And then we're going to be on YouTube. We're going to be everywhere. But how are you doing while we give people time to arrive? Suzanne, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm happy and excited to be having this conversation with you because, well, first, you know, I adore you. So that's first and foremost. But secondly, just because I love having these jam sessions with people that I really respect and love what they're doing in the world. And so for me, this is just fun. This is just fun.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Well, those of you who are joining us live, definitely give us some love, some hearts. It's really funny. Facebook supposedly likes angry faces, which is totally bizarre. But if they want drama, we can give them drama. Totally serious. Is that hilarious? This is the world we live in. Hearts don't get as much attention from Facebook as angry faces.
That would make total sense considering the fact that, you know, we are all addicted in some way, shape, or form to drama. So, yeah.
I was saying, we were talking this morning in my mastermind, and I said, yeah, you know, if we all found out that NBC made some huge snafu online, you know, like while they were televising, we would all be curious about what happened and it would go viral because they made a mistake. But most of the time we want nothing to do with it. So everyone's got a little curiosity inside of them. And I'm hoping that everyone has curiosity about retreats today, because that's what we're going to be talking about. Welcome, Suzanne. So happy you're here. We go way back.
way back in our own mastermind. So.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe, you know, as we give folks time to arrive, it would be lovely if you could share more about who you are, what you do, and especially through this lens of retreats, because this is what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. So where to begin? So I am Suzanne Hanna, and I am the founder and creator of an organization called the Wilderness Walk. And there's a whole backstory to the name of that, to that name, which I won't get into because that could be a whole nother conversation. But I am a psychotherapist. I've been a therapist for 25 years. I'm a shadow coach. I am a speaker, writer. And I love retreats. I mean, that is where I believe the magic happens. I believe that it's where people come together and do real, true integration. Because a lot of times in the virtual world, we're still hiding in so many ways, and we're not truly connecting in a way that I think is transformational. So there's something about being live, being in person, truly connecting, the level of vulnerability, the level of transparency, all of that happens in sacred circles, I think is potent, and I think it's powerful. And it's a big part of what I do with my journeys.
That's great. And had you attended retreats way back and you thought, oh my gosh, I totally want to do this someday? Just curious.
Yeah. So I used to be like a workshop junkie. You know, I was like one of those people who would be like, and, you know, my mentor and teacher, Jan Van Zant, used to facilitate a lot of retreats and live workshops and things like that. So I did a lot of that stuff in my own personal development and my own healing journey. And I saw how potent it was and how powerful it was for me. And I've seen how powerful it is for all of the people who've come through in my community and done the work as well.
we were talking about retreats this morning in the mastermind that I run, and there was a question of like, well, have you got an itinerary yet? And it was funny because I was like, okay, where to begin? And I'm wondering if you have that same response, because what we ended up talking about is that you could have all the greatest plans, lined up, and yet the magic is in what happens. Can you talk about that for us?
Yeah, for sure. So there's an old quote that I love, which is God laughs, while we're making plans, or, it's like, because the truth of the matter is that one of the biggest values and components of my retreats and my journeys is the idea of mystery and wonder. And I believe that it is in sort of the unknown and the uncertainty of what is going to show up, how it's going to play out. I mean, there's so many elements that you actually can't control, which I think is the beautiful part of it. And that's when we can kind of experience what I call, the divine intervention, because that's always so much better than what any of us could create anyway. And so I feel like there's an element of just trusting the process, of just leaning in and just allowing the unfolding of what happens. Because I think, yes, you can create a loose itinerary, which I do for most of my journeys. But I always say on the very first evening of my journeys is I say, take this just as a very loose guidance, because spirit might have a whole different plan. All right. So just, it's a very loose itinerary.
And why do you think that that's so important that we realize? Because let's get real practical. Somebody you find out about a retreat, you go to some page or some, sales information or a brochure, and you're consuming all the information. You want to see, like, what are the dates? Do they work for me? How much is this going to cost? And then it's like, what am I going to get out of this? Like, you're making this very logical purchase decision, especially if it's the first time or you've only done it a few times. You're like, okay, I'm ready now. But that isn't, you have to go through those steps, but there's so much more going on. And I feel like, having done what you have done, which is put on events for huge groups of people and smaller groups of people, like, the context of your experience is enormous as it pertains to retreats. But I'm curious about, there's the logical decision, and then I feel like there's this whole other, like, level of decision making. Could you help us? Like, what's going on there? What would you suggest people do if they're thinking about attending a retreat?
I love that question, because in a big part of, I have what I call trail wisdom. And one of the first pieces of trail wisdom is called answer the call. And what that means to me is that I believe that people are drawn to something. There's no real logical explanation. They're just drawn to an experience. They could be drawn to a retreat leader. They could be going through something in their lives where they're just drawn to deeper healing, personal development. And so what I say is, yes, I mean, there are some logistical things that people have to consider, which is, dates and finances and things like that. But I feel that people who are really ready to go on retreats, there is sort of this deeper inner knowing. I think that's the best way that I can say it, that, this is something I want to do. This is something I need to do. This is something I'm being called to do. And it could be because there's something happening in their life that is sort of the catalyst for it. Or it could just be, a deeper commitment to their own personal growth, their own personal development, no matter what it is that the retreat is offering. Because no matter what the retreat experience is, I find that there is always a level of deeper integration that happens on retreats.
Mm-hmm. One of the things when we had our pre-conversation to this discussion today that came up was this action of ultimate self-care. And what does that mean in the context of the lives that we're living today? What does it mean to truly invest in yourself? Because let's face it, buying a book might cost you 20, 30 bucks. Investing in a retreat is going to cost you a lot more than that. And the commitment that you're making isn't just, the week or perhaps even more that you're, traveling somewhere and devoting yourself to turning all the stuff off, but investing in yourself. A lot of us are not familiar with that sort of decision making. And by the way, a lot of these things I will say, and Suzanne, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm the finance person. Like, if you have a business and you're going on retreat, it's pretty likely you're going to be working through business stuff. And so therefore it could potentially be a write-off. So I will add that in.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I say to people all the time, when they come on my retreats, that they're absolutely a write-off. Because, well, let me go back to, the beginning of your question, which I think is a really good one. And this is something that I could talk for hours about. And I've experienced this both personally and professionally, is that when it comes to what we prioritize in our lives, we are usually last on the list. We prioritize family, children, businesses, finances. We prioritize a lot of other things. But what I tell people is that your external world is a reflection of your internal landscape. And so it's really, really important, I think, first and foremost, that our personal journeys, our personal well-being, our personal healing is going to impact everything. It creates a ripple effect. So it's going to impact your parenting. It's going to impact your business leadership. It's going to impact your relationships. It's going to impact everything. And so to me, I think it's a non-negotiable, honestly. I feel like it is something that should be a priority for all of us, even if it's, something, here and there. Obviously, we have a lot of other things going on in our lives. I even have in my own personal budget, every year I do a personal retreat. And that is paramount for me every year, because it helps me realign, it helps me reconnect, it helps me to focus just solely on myself. What a gift that is, to not have to focus on all the external factors that we focus on in very, very busy lives. And the last thing I'll say is that what you can get from a book is knowledge. What you get from a retreat is life-changing experience. So you choose, which is going to be more important, right? And more sustainable.
Because when you're inside of a retreat experience, perhaps walk us through what a day might look and feel like for someone participating.
Well, first and foremost, I think there's something about being away from all of the distractions. I think that's something that's really, really important to think about. You're not having to look at, oh, my house needs to be cleaned, or I got to do the laundry, or I got to pick up the kids, or I've got to, do XYZ for my business. It's just, there's nothing else when you wake up to focus on except for yourself. And so I think that is the most important thing to understand. And, for me, I mean, not all retreats do this, but for my retreats, I really focus on 4 levels of healing: emotional, mental, spiritual, and physical. And when you're on retreat, you get to focus on all of those levels of healing, so that you're eating well, there's movement, there's, time for deep reflection, there's times to be challenged, so many different things that can happen, where most people, I call it, the retreat high. Most people, when they leave a retreat, they're on this high, they're in this bubble, and they feel empowered, they feel aligned, they feel energized, which is very, very different that I think will happen if we don't take time and space away from our everyday world, if that makes sense. So there's a lot of things that can happen through the course of a day on a retreat, but they're mostly focused on those 4 levels of being.
The opportunity to focus on yourself, like I want to unpack that a little bit more, because the first thought that comes to me,
there a mirror here?
well, the first thought that comes to me is that how you do one thing is how you do everything. So if you're not careful, and this is part of, I think, the facilitation that you do in your retreats, right? Is if you're not careful and you are someone who is always focused on everyone else, are the kids fed? Like the dog's fed, the students happy, the employees going along, I think you name it, like everyone else. And then there's this part at the end of the day, right before your head hits that pillow, is like, how you doing, Lisa, or fill in the blanks.
Right.
But that's actually a cycle that we're wanting to potentially break with. Not that we don't want to take care of others. It's an important part of our lives for most of us. But there's something else here where if everyone always comes first, and I think of the diagram, we were talking about this the other day, right? The urgent and important. So you've got your urgent and important in one box, and then you've got the what is it? Urgent and not important. And then I might be mixing it up, but like you might fall into like the bottom right corner, not urgent, not important. And I'm guessing that what you want to do as the facilitator is change the way that people are thinking about themselves and their own self-care. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. So the first thing I will say is that most people who go on retreats that struggle with putting themselves first actually feel really uncomfortable, because there's a level of control that we give up when we move away from the parenting, the spouse, the business, because, we have to kind of put that into somebody else's hands. We have to delegate. And so that's uncomfortable for a lot of people because we are not conditioned, especially women, because we're not, we're not conditioned to put ourselves first. So that's first and foremost. But I can't tell you how many people have come to me, and some of the primary pain points that I hear is, I'm just exhausted. I'm depleted. I feel lost. I feel like I don't know who I am anymore. I feel like I feel burdened by all of the responsibilities that I have and the things that I have to do in any given day or week. And so what happens for a lot of people is that they need to feel like they're kind of dropped back into their body. They've got to kind of come back to themselves. And because the truth of the matter is, and I use this term traps and hazards for people who know my work, but one of the biggest traps I think that we get into is busyness and distractions. And we get so busy and so distracted that we're sort of on autopilot. And we don't even really know what matters to us. We don't really know what's important. We don't really know what we need. And so therefore, how do we even ask for it if we don't know what we need? So I just feel like there's an element of reconnection that happens on retreats to yourself, which allows you to tap into, oh, this is what I need. Oh, this is what's important to me. Oh, this is where I've been creating barriers and blocks in my life. Oh, this is what I'm afraid of. And so we really get to know ourselves on a much deeper level. And then we can go back into our lives and we can create changes based on that.
Mm-hmm. And what I'm hearing is that when you're super busy and you're running from one thing to the next in your regular life, you may feel like you have clarity. You may think that you know that you're making good decisions for yourself. But what you've seen in the retreat context, and when you've worked with so many people over the years, is you've watched them come to retreat and realize that many of the decisions and the choices that they are making are not serving them in the way that they thought. So you're questioning the assumptions and getting out of potential funks that you might not even, you're like, oh, it's good enough. It's good and it's fine. Everything's fine. Meanwhile, you're, having that cocktail and like thinking maybe this will make me feel better or whatever it is, right? Whatever that thing is that we go to. But you come to retreat, you get a clarity of mind, and that's when stuff starts to really reconfigure itself before your
Yes.
eyes.
Yeah, so I use the word alignment, and it's a big word in my work. And so I feel like the majority of us go through life out of alignment. We're out of alignment with our values. We're out of alignment with our truth. We're out of alignment with what's important to us. And so I see retreats and my particular journeys as a way to realign. And when you realign, you're able to, like you say, you're able to get the clarity, the wisdom, the wherewithal to really be able to make some big choices that many of us avoid because either we feel maybe this isn't the right choice. Maybe I don't know what I'm doing. I see this all the time where people will come on retreats and then maybe they might be unhappy in a relationship, but it's easier to kind of just go through the motions than it is to actually disrupt the status quo. And what I say to people is, yes, that may be easier, but it's out of alignment. And when you're out of alignment, it takes a toll on your body. It takes a toll on your emotions. It takes a toll on your mental capacities, and it just takes a toll on your soul and psyche. And so what I say is that the damage done in the long term is far greater, far greater. And so, and a lot of times, this, people don't necessarily always create change unless they're in crisis, unless the pain gets so great that they are like, okay, I have to make change, or they get a health diagnosis, or, their spouse leaves them, or some huge catalyst happens. And then people are like, oh yeah, I guess, I need to do something different. And what I say to people is that why wait for a crisis when you can actually be co-creating your life as you go along, and you're not sort of just what I call collateral damage, to your life.
Yeah, we have some questions coming in. One is, how can you assess if you're ready to host a retreat?
Oh, great question. So, a lot of it has to do with, retreats take a lot of work. They're definitely a big investment in a way of kind of developing your business. One of the things that I've said to people is, when you're first starting out with retreats, it's good to have retreats as part of like a program. So like, for instance, Lisa, if you were hosting some type of program and then you had a retreat as part of that, sometimes that's an easier way to start because it's sort of built into the program that you're doing. And so it's kind of built in the cost, it's built in all of those ways. To do a standalone retreat is a much bigger, I would say, risk. It's a much bigger investment because, you are dependent on, people showing up and people signing up and all of that kind of stuff. But I will tell you, I've been doing retreats now for 12 years. I've never canceled a retreat. I've never lost money on a retreat. And, there is a way that I think if you're truly committed and invested in it, and I mean, literally, I've actually thought about doing just like an evergreen course about how to build retreats and how to do all of that kind of stuff, because I think there are a lot of ins and outs that most people don't think about and they forget. I was just talking to somebody today who's hosting a retreat, and she said, I totally forgot to build in tax. Like, I didn't think anything about the tax. And so she was hit with like a large sum of money that she had to, put up in order to cover the tax of the retreat. And so little things that people don't think about that, they need to think about. But I would say the best thing is either to do it as part of a program first, or do something small and local where you're not having to have travel expenses, you're not having, so then you can really kind of have a lower cost retreat, and you can kind of use it as a beta and see how it works and see how it runs and see how you like it, see who shows up, and then take it from there and build from there. I did 2 beta retreats when I first started my journeys. And it gave me a lot of information that I needed. And so I feel like doing something like that is a great way to start, just to feel it out.
Yeah, I will say the money piece, the investing piece of pulling it all together is the thing that I've had the hardest time with. I love, and it's easy now for me to do retreats as part of my programs, just like you said. So I would say the same, that's a great place to start it. You can embed the pricing into that, or at least accommodate for it, and know that you're going to be okay no matter what, but you don't have to worry yourself about selling a certain number of tickets to break even or what have you. But when I've planned them, and they have been destinations, Hawaii or even Sedona, for people to come, it has been more stress for me than I enjoy. And so this is part of the reason that I'm glad this question was asked, because I think it's good to be cautious about it, especially if you are, concerned about having it not cover itself, and how much pressure you can put on yourself to and still feel comfortable and still sleep at night and not worry about what those costs are. But you have, Suzanne, the reason that we're having you here today is because you have had great success with it. You figured it out. You've had experiences with hundreds of people. You've planned events with hundreds of people. And then typically when you do a retreat, now, do you have size, like certain number of people that you found is a good number?
Yeah. So, events. So yeah. And that was doing events that are over several days is a whole different type of journey than doing, one of the retreats. I typically say that a great number for retreats is really between, my sweet spot is between 10 and 14. But I know some people don't like to do more than 8. 8 seems to be a good number for some people. I feel like if you get less than 8, depending on your cost, then sometimes it can, because literally probably the first 4 people who sign up, that money all goes towards the investment of the retreat space, the food, all of that kind of stuff. So it's really after that where you start to be able to generate some profit. But I'll also say there's so many different creative ways now to do retreats. Like I do both. I rent retreat spaces, but I also rent private homes. And renting private homes is actually less expensive than a retreat center. And so, and then you can hire people to come in and do the meals and all of that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of creative ways to do it. I will also say that I think an important element of this is knowing that it takes time to build. It's like any business. When I first started out, it took a lot more energy and a lot more outreach to fill those spaces and to build. Once you get known for something, once you get then people start to seek you out. They start to say, hey, let me get on your waiting list. When is your next retreat? Those kinds of things. And when that starts to happen, it gets easier and easier. But if you just do one retreat, it's hard to build momentum. I will say that. So you kind of have to discern, If you're going to do a retreat as part of a program, that's easier. But if you're going to do just one retreat, just to do one retreat, it's going to be hard to build momentum over time, because you're not going to build, you're not going to be seen as an expert in that area, basically.
Yeah, such a great question. Thank you so much for sharing that, because I think that it is on the minds of a lot of people. And it sounds so glamorous to like plan these retreats. I just saw like we're going to talk about it, but I saw like Bali next year. Is that what I heard? Like, and you're going all over the place. So there is a glamorous component to it, but there's also a lot of work. And there was one other question around, and you may have answered this, but I just want to give you the chance in case something else comes up, is what sort of transformation can be expected from participating in a retreat?
Great question. So I would say it depends on the retreat. So, the types of retreats that I do are built around transformation. So that's what I focus on. I focus on personal, as I said, the four levels of healing I focus on. So, but there are other retreats that are more focused on business. There are other retreats that are more focused on health and wellness. There are retreats that are, so I think it's the type of retreat that you're choosing to go on. I think if you're looking to have it be something around your own personal growth and your personal development, then it's important to go on a retreat that focuses on that. If you're looking to focus on your health, then it's good to go on a retreat that focuses on that. So I think it really depends on what your need is and but I will tell you from my perspective and from my retreats, I don't know anyone who's gone through one of my retreats and came out the same. I really don't. And there might be some people in your group that have been on my retreats, so maybe they can attest better than I can, but
they are sharing.
Okay, because I just don't know. There is just no way, because of the way my retreats are designed. But, and I also think that there's certain levels of intensity on retreats. My retreats are pretty intense, but there are other ones that are just focused on relaxation. There's others that are focused on, just, doing yoga. So it really just depends on what your need is and what you're looking for. But if you're looking to really transform, come on a wilderness walk. So that's what I would say about that. But I just feel it really is dependent on the particular retreat.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because some people think of retreat and they're like, okay, there's going to be massage, there's going to be some pool time, there's going to be some cocktails, like, woohoo, it's more like a glorified vacation that gets to be written off. And nothing wrong with it, awesome. But what I'm hearing you say is be sure that you are clear about what it is that you are wanting. Are you looking to transform your, business and take it to the next level? Are you looking at doing some personal development with the idea that when I change, my whole world changes? So it's not that I think somebody couldn't come on your retreat as a business owner and walk out and go back and make huge changes in their business, but the way they go about it is going to be more inner reflective rather than which funnel should I use to.
Yeah, and I will say, I think that's a really good point, Lisa, because, here's the thing. I mean, there's two things that I call external change and internal change. And, external change is great when you're looking to more for education, but internal change is more about transformation. And so I feel like, it all depends on what you're looking for. I have had people go on retreats and be sorely disappointed because they've been looking for more personal transformation. And what they felt they got was more, like you said, like a glass of wine on the beach and yoga. And they left feeling disappointed. So I think you have to have a lot of clarity about what it is that you're looking for and find the right retreat that fits that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what would you say to folks? How would they know, or what are some questions perhaps that you could ask yourself to know if like what you're planning would be a good fit for someone? What kind of questions would you encourage someone to think about for themselves?
Well, here's a key component that I utilize on my retreats. And I find that this is, most people do not do this, which is becoming radically honest. We have to be radically honest with ourselves of what we need and what we're looking for. Because I think a lot of the times we don't ask ourselves the most important questions. We don't reflect. So I find that if people are struggling, if they're in a situation where there might be a lot of fear that they're navigating, or there might be some self-sabotage, or they just might feel a sense of, like I said, feeling a sense of just, I feel lost, I don't, or directionless, whatever the case may be, but discerning, do you really want to shift? There's two components I say people need for personal transformation, and that is readiness and willingness. You need to be ready and you need to be willing. If you're really looking just to go and relax, then don't expect transformation. If you're looking to learn about business funnels, then you might come out feeling more overwhelmed than when you went in. Right. So it just really depends. But the people who come on my retreats, they're there because they're really looking to do deeper inner work.
And would the outcome, I hear that, but I'm also like, the outcome is I'm wanting to up level my relationships, or I want to take things, I want to up level the relationship I have with work, or like you're wanting to reach a new level in your life, right?
Yeah. So going back to a question you had earlier, so a huge population of people who come on my retreats are actually entrepreneurs and business leaders. And a lot of reasons why that is because people get to a place where they want to up level, they want to get more clarity, they want to show up differently in that area of their life. Or this, Lisa, that sometimes we can be really successful in one area of our lives but really struggle in another. So we might be really successful in business, but our relationship might be falling apart, right? Or we might be really successful in our relationship, but our health is falling apart. So we really have to look at, that's why I use the word alignment, because alignment is so key, because when we feel aligned in all of those different areas, then we are going to be more successful in those areas. So yeah, I believe that the catalyst of what gets people to show up may be different, but the outcome is the same, which is most people want to feel more at peace within themselves and more aligned within themselves. So that even if they have to do something that may be hard, like leave a relationship or, pivot their business, whatever it is that might be challenging, they have a better wherewithal internally in order to handle it,
Yeah. The other thing coming to mind is that because it's a contained amount of time, and going back to, I'm a money coach, right? Time is money. So like, if you're looking at something and you're like, this could take me a year, or this could take me a week, which one is going to benefit me the most? And I would say you get to make the call, but am I mistaken in that? Like, you're going to go in and you could work out, what's the challenge? What baggage do I have to drop? What sorts of things do I have to deal with in my mind? But the cool thing is that year-long struggle, even if you're with a coach, it's very different on a retreat when you're with a coach and they're right there catching you when your life starts to unravel in your mind. I mean, those sorts of things, that's necessary to have a big change going forward, right?
It's funny you're bringing this up, because I actually just talked to somebody before I got on this call with you, someone who's going to be doing one of my retreats. And she said to me, she said, well, she was concerned about time investment and talking about time. And I said to her, do you want to invest, 2 months or 2 years or potentially 20 years? I mean, I've had people come into my journeys and say that they got more in a week or a month than they have had in potentially years of therapy or coaching or whatever the case may be, because it is amplified in such a way that things happen much more quickly. But there is a level of investment that you have to make in order to make that happen,
Yeah, this is so helpful. Anna was sharing, I went on my first retreat because I was stuck after years of work in therapy and still feeling stuck in my life. It was very transformative and helpful. And then the second retreat was for clarity around right livelihood and making that change. So like, I love that, Anna. Thank you. Just giving us that perspective that you could go in and pick something that you want to work on, realizing, that's plenty. It's not like you're going to cover every single base in your life and then go back and like, okay, now I see what I'm here to work on. And how beautiful is that? Like, again, back to self-care, because what I'm reading in her comments is just massive amounts of self-care and compassion, that this is going to be the place that will help me the most. One of the things you said to me was, because your retreats are on the smaller side, you have the ability to talk to people, to curate the community, to make sure that the right people are coming on the journey and that they're ready for that level of transformation. What is that process if someone wanted to explore? And I know we'll give them dates and things of what's up, but what is that process that you invite people into when they're thinking about joining you?
I think, again, I think a lot of it has to do with what's happening with people, both externally and internally at any given time. It goes back to that urgency. And what was the other word you used? Immediate?
Like important and urgent.
Yeah. So, for many people, we get to a place in our lives where there's just certain things that we can't ignore anymore. I mean, we just can't ignore it. And so I look at it as life is fragile. It is hugely fragile. I mean, look at everything that's happening in the world collectively. And one of my very important values is that that we live life full out, that we live life in a way where our aliveness and our internal well-being is what is most paramount. And so I guess, it really comes down to a very personal choice. But when I talk to people and I see people who don't prioritize their well-being, 9 out of 10 times, there will be a moment where they will circle back, because I say to people all the time, you have 2 choices in life. You can choose to evolve, or the universe will evolve you. One way or the other, you're going to evolve, but you get to choose it, or you get to, be the recipient of it, which is like the universal 2x4 that many of us get over and over and over again. And so I've made a commitment to myself in my life that I want to co-create my life. I don't want to live by default. And so that's a key component for me. I think there's nothing better than feeling a sense of empowerment that comes with co-creation, as opposed to feeling like life is happening to me, and constantly feeling bombarded, as opposed to, no, I get to choose. I get to co-create. I get to do those things. And that doesn't mean that sometimes things still don't happen in our lives that are hard, that are painful, that are difficult. But even the way we respond to those things is part of the co-creation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what is that process when people are like, they're resonating with this conversation, they feel like it's time. Maybe they've done, I was a thought in my head earlier, like maybe they've done the Tony Robbins experience and they liked it or didn't, but they're feeling drawn to something much deeper and closer to their heart. And what's that process for someone to get started on the journey with you, or finding out if you'd be the right mentor for them?
Well, I think the biggest thing is whomever is facilitating a journey or a retreat. I think the first step is connecting with them and seeing if it resonates. A lot of times, I've seen people who've signed up for things and then they've done it and they've invested the time and the money, and then they're there and they're realizing this doesn't feel resonant. So I feel like there has to be a level of resonance that happens no matter what anybody decides to do. So I think the first step is curiosity and getting information and deciding, is this resonant for me at this point of in my life and where I am, no matter what it is that you do. I think that's important. I think it's the same with, Lisa, people are here in this community because they resonate with you. They wouldn't be here if they didn't. And so there's a level of resonance that they have with who you are, what you stand for, how you show up, how you teach. And I feel like, there can be many teachers along the path, but I think that, there needs to be a level of resonance with that. So I think there has to be some investigating that has to happen and say, does this resonate with me? Is this what I need at this time? Do I resonate with this, what this person does, what they stand for, all of that.
Yeah. And Megan was so helpful. She posted something, thewildernesswalk.com, take a journey. Is this a way for them to learn more about what you've got coming up?
Yeah. So I do 2 journeys. I do the journey from fear to freedom, which is a more intense journey. It's a 2.5-month experience. Some of that happens online and through online coaching. And then there's a week-long retreat. And then I do a journey to stillness, which is a shorter version. It's more of a 2-week prep, and then there's a 4 to 5 day retreat. So there's 2 different types of journeys that I do. One focuses more on excavation, and the other one focuses more on stepping deeper into your purpose, your talents, your truth, your personal power, all of that. So they're a little bit different, but they're pretty well explained on my website, which is thewildernesswalk.com. But yeah, so I mean, that's the first place to go if they're looking to investigate me. But again, I think whomever they do retreats with, they should do some form of investigation. But I will tell you, just from personal and professional experiences, that doing personal healing work has changed my business and has changed my life.
Yeah, 100%. And people, because there were a few things that came through in the comments, and I think Anna indicated that she was able to use a retreat with you to decide that it was time to actually leave a career and go out on her own. So sometimes, like, could someone come to any of your retreats and have that happen? Or are there certain events where people come because they all work for other people now and they're thinking about that launching of a business? Or tell us how that works.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, because understanding that, it's like what I said to you earlier about whatever the catalyst is, whatever the pain point might be, it doesn't really matter, because as long as you show up and you put yourself fully into any experience, it's going to come up. It's going to come up because it's so it's such a big part of your internal experience. In the situation with Anna, she felt very out of alignment because she was doing a job that didn't feed her soul, that she felt wasn't resonant with what her gifts were, her talents were. She wanted to do something that was more creative. And so for her, a lot of times people don't take the leap because of financial reasons, financial security, fear fear of the unknown. Will I be successful in doing something else? But what I tell people, it's like that old saying, when you leap, the net will appear. It always does. It's just a matter of how that net appears. But if you're continuing to do something that's out of alignment, you're never going to get to the next place or the next part of your evolution. You're going to feel like you're kind of just circling. And that's what happens for a lot of people. They just circle, 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 circle. And no matter what the outcome is, you're being more true to yourself. And that's what's most important.
Mm-hmm. What I'm hearing is perhaps for people to ask themselves, is there any pattern of circling appearing in my life? And when we say circling, it's like thinking this isn't working, but I don't know what to do about it. I'll just make it work. And then you just keep finding yourself going back through that same thought process in your mind, and yet nothing changes. But that might be a way that you're like, maybe a retreat would be the way that I could break that pattern. And yes, it is scary. Yes, there is this thing where you aren't going to know what's on the other side until you go through it. You can't go over it, can't go under it, got to go through it. And the retreats are what helps you to do that. So before we wrap up, I would love it. Like, could you plant a few seeds of like what is happening this year and perhaps even next year, so I can live vicariously through this moment? Because I know I'm going to be on one of them, and maybe someday we're going to do it.
I was just going to say, Lisa's coming on a retreat. That's the seed that I am planting. Yeah, so any given year I can do like this year I'm doing 4 retreats. Next year I'm going to be doing 2. It depends on any given year because I'm actually developing my own certification program. So that's taking a lot of my time, which also has a retreat component to it. So, so that's important. So yeah, I mean, I do several retreats a year. I also created a community where my main focus in that community now is on transitions and thresholds, because I feel like we're constantly moving through transitions and thresholds in our lives, and people need guidance and they need tools on how to do that. Because just as you were saying, Lisa, so much of these transitions have an element of uncertainty. And whenever there's something that's uncertain, fear is going to get activated. And so we kind of need the tools, we need the guidance. How do I get from A to B to C to D to E? We have to be able to do that, because otherwise, like we say, we'll just keep circling. So people can go to I have 2 websites, SuzanneHanna.com, thewildernesswalk.com, to learn more about me, to learn more about what I do. And yeah, I mean, anybody who's interested, who might be interested in a retreat, I'm happy to set up a conversation and talk about that. But yeah, I mean, I just, what the only seed that I will plant for people who are listening is just know that time is fragile. And if there is anything in your life, whether it's business, relationships, your health, anything in your life that is causing you a lot of discomfort or fear, you don't have to stay there. There are ways that you can navigate through that. So.
Yeah, that's great. No, it's exciting. And I was saying that I'm not sure when I will be doing hosting more public retreats. I host them inside of my programs currently, and I get a lot of people asking about them. And I'm encouraging folks to follow Suzanne and check out what she's got going on, because you have a lot of experience. You are very skilled. People will be completely safe in the environment that you create. And I have no doubt in my mind that it will be an incredible experience, or we wouldn't be having this conversation today. So I encourage folks to reach out and to look into these retreats. You know, if you aren't ready to make the investment, then create a vision board around it, right? Do something that says might not be right now, but it can be in the future. And this is what I want it to do. This is what I want to get out of it. Like, do that for yourself. I started doing retreats my first retreat was in 2000, and, been on many over the years. And I'm a completely different person. And every single time I step away from my life, I turn off the phone. I tell everyone, you will not. I like international retreats for this reason. It's just like, there's no way I'm not buying the service. You're not going to get me there. Just shut it all down so that you can completely immerse in the experience. And the more you do that, as Suzanne, I'm sure will tell you, the more you'll get from the whole thing. So any parting words before we wrap up?
Yes, I'm planting the seed that Lisa Pearson will be in Bali in March of next year. That's
that sounds really
good.
There, everyone heard it. That sounds really good. I have not been there yet, so I would feel like that would be a beautiful way to start my experience in Bali. So thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, everyone, for watching and for asking the questions and for sharing your experiences with Suzanne. I really appreciate that as well. And
and if post anything on a replay, I'm happy to chime in later too.
Yeah, because you're in the group. So feel free to tag Suzanne if you're watching this later, ask questions or PM her, or I can make sure that you get in touch with her, but we're happy to help. We want your personal transformation to happen. And we want you to do it in a safe and beautiful and loving, supportive environment. And that's what you get when you come to Suzanne and I.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.